Hello, welcome back. This time we're going to be looking at the end of chapter 4 and the beginning of chapter 5. So, the scholarship in chapter 4 is a piece called A Question of Origins by Helene Foley, and she is going to argue that myth reinforces social norms. Keep in mind that that would be the predominant view of myth, right? The purpose of myth, even Malinowski would say that, right? If myth is generally serves as charters for behavior, it's advocating a certain behavior that is helpful for the society to continue and thrive, right? So that's the idea. Why do you tell these stories? To get people on the same page. So she's going to argue that. Now, she's doing that regarding the Homeric hymn number 2 to Demeter because there are feminist scholars going back to into the mid 20th century who were arguing that, in fact, Homeric hymn number 2 to Demeter was actually a criticism of patriarchy and was seeking to undermine that. And though she agrees with the aim, patriarchy is bad and needs to be sort of confronted, she feels that the hymn does not actually do that, that it is actually designed to reinforce things like marriage practice. So that's what the Foley article is about. And what's going to happen in the next chapter, of course, is we're going to see the counter to that, which is that myth tends to challenge social norms or the normal pattern. The comparison is a poem from Mesopotamia. It's written in Akkadian. It comes from sometime between the 10th century, like around 900, to the 7th century, to around 600, called The Descent of Ishtar. Ishtar is the Babylonian equivalent and maybe the predecessor of Aphrodite. In fact, Aphrodite, remember, she's associated with Cyprus. Cyprus is right near Phoenicia, and the Phoenician goddess Ashtart was a direct descendant of Ishtar. So you've got Ishtar, Ashtart directly comes from her, and you've got all of that stuff interacting with the island of Cyprus, which is very close. So there's a good chance that Aphrodite, as we have her, is actually a mix of different deities that has become Hellenized in Greek hands. Now, if you remember in Hesiod's Theogony, the explanation was that the name Aphrodite meant from the foam because she was born out of the foaming scrotal sac that was floating in the sea. This is a false etymology. That is not actually the etymology of Aphrodite. Aphrodite appears not to be an Indo-European name, and likely is some goddess name from the East that got incorporated into the Greeks. So, this would be more of it. Now, in the Descent of Ishtar, Ishtar goes to the underworld, perhaps to retrieve her lover. So this would be like Venus and Adonis or Aphrodite and Adonis. But it's unclear. I mean, as you read the poem is very difficult sort of to follow. The only thing that's clear is that she has to go through 7 gates. At each of the 7 gates, she is asked to give up a piece of her clothing. So like her earrings, a necklace she has, and so forth, until she's naked and powerless. So like as she loses her clothes, she also loses her power. And Ereshkigal, the goddess of the underworld, views her as a threat. So this Descent of Ishtar would be somewhat similar to Demeter wanting to get her daughter back, and it would also be like Aphrodite wanting to get Adonis back. And Dumuzi, the lover of Ishtar, is generally seen as an Eastern version of Adonis and equivalent to Adonis. It's an interesting poem. I imagine in performance, if this were performed by a choir, performing it, it would be quite effective. The reception thing is actually changed a little bit from the first edition. We have a single poem It's a short poem by Rita Dove called "The Narcissus Flower." Um, if you have any sort of trauma in your background relating to rape, this poem might be something you want to avoid. So I want to give you the warning because that could be an issue. In the poem, Rita Dove is imagining Persephone and her reaction to being taken by Hades. To her own experience, she had been a student in France, and she's quite attractive, and she worked as an artist model to make money, and just I guess to get experience in things. And she was raped by an artist, so it's she's sort of blurring the line between herself and Persephone. It is sort of too bad that we don't have the other two poems that had been in the other ones, because they offer a different vision. This one clearly is a very dark vision, which is certainly a way to read the Homeric hymn to Demeter. And personally, Dove, I mean, she was attacked, so she has the right to process that however she needs to process it. It's a very well written poem. In its way, it's a beautiful poem, though it's a disturbing poem. But if you have some trauma in your background and you want to avoid it, I would just say avoid it. It's the most it's going to cost you is one question on a test. So that's just out there. Moving on to chapter 5. Chapter 5 lists 4 gods: Aphrodite, Ares, Eros, and Hephaestus. It's going to mainly focus on Aphrodite. It's mainly going to focus on Aphrodite. And so keep that in mind. One of the things that's summarized is the love affair of Ares and Aphrodite, which comes from from Odyssey, Book 8. In that, Odysseus is at a banquet, and there's after dinner entertainment, and the singer sings this song about Aphrodite and Ares. And in the module there should be a translation of that, just that section that you can read. It's a pretty funny story that Hephaestus catches his wife Aphrodite. He's married to Aphrodite when she's having sex with Ares. He engineers a net that's invisible, and of course when they hop into bed, it springs the trap, and then of course all the other gods come to laugh at them. That poem in the Odyssey, of course, serves as stark contrast to Odysseus' situation. Odysseus is he's going to come home to a faithful wife, but if his wife is unfaithful, it means he'll be coming back to be killed, right? Because the new husband or the lover of Penelope would then, of course, want to kill Odysseus as a threat. So on the mortal level, adultery can have serious consequences among the gods. It's basically a big joke. The main work that we get in chapter 5, the beginning, is Homeric hymn number 5 to Aphrodite. And this tells the love story of Aphrodite and Anchises. It really tells the story of the one-night stand of Aphrodite and Anchises. The story goes as follows, that Zeus and the other gods are all basically prey to Aphrodite. She can make them fall in love with whoever. There are 3 goddesses who are exempt, but everyone else basically is under her sway. And in Zeus' case, right, he's hopping into bed with just about everyone, and this makes him something of a laughingstock, a position he can't really afford as king of the gods. To make it worse, Aphrodite herself has never had romantic feelings for a mortal, and so she is immune, and so she can go around and say, yeah, you gods are a bunch of weaklings, you're just hopping in bed with mortals, but look at me, I'm the goddess of love, and this never happened to me. And so Zeus decides to give her a taste of her own medicine. He makes her, it's not explained how, fall in love with Anchises, who's a Trojan prince, who happens to be tending sheep in the mountains for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why a prince is doing that, but that's where he is. She shows up dressed to the nines. He, of course, suspects this is not someone. One, she's not from around there, and two, the way she's dressed, this is not a normal situation. This is a goddess or a nymph. And so he does what you're supposed to do. He offers to build a shrine. He offers to give annual worship to this figure. What he's trying to beg off is to go to bed with this figure, though he desires that, because when mortals have sex with gods, it turns out generally badly. In the case of women, they're unmarried moms who basically are stuck with this heroic kid, which is great on one level, but they're often ostracized by their community. So that's the danger for women. For men, what usually happens if you have sex with a goddess is that you are rendered impotent afterwards. It's like all your mojo has been used up in this one night of passion. And so that's what Anchises is afraid of. Of course, Aphrodite lies so that Anchises will go to bed with her, and the next morning she dolls herself up so she looks very much like Aphrodite. She looks even more goddess-like than she did the night before, and then she basically kicks the sleeping Anchises so he wakes up, and it's just, do I look like I did last night? And then Anchises totally freaks out and loses it because he figures now he's going to be impotent. So it's also sort of a humorous story, but it does show a definite layer in the relationships between God and humans. But even among the gods, there is sort of a power struggle. It's more of a game, but it's still sort of a struggle. So that's just the sort of 5 points, right? 5 points each time from this week's reading. So I hope you enjoyed the reading. I think most of the reading should be actually fun. And the parts that are going to be less fun, maybe at least are short. So that should help get you through the stuff. So see you next time.